Let's take a look at some 2-5 hands from the win. And in this first hand, look down at ace king of clubs from under the gun +1. Make it 20 to go, pretty standard raise size, and get 2 calls. The flop comes pretty good for us. Ace 10-3 with 2 diamonds. I make it 45 to go. And right off the bat, you can look at my sizing there, I think. You can size pretty big here. I think at least 3/4 pot is the way to go here. If someone else has a top pair, it's not going to matter too much what size you choose. They're probably going to call. If someone has a flush draw, they're going to call no matter what size you choose. And if someone has, say, a middling pair like pocket 9s, pocket 8s, they're probably going to fold those hands no matter what size you choose. So you might as well get max value versus top pairs and flush draws. So 45 to go, and both players make the call. So 3 ways to a turn card. It's a really good card. It's an offsuit 4, so it shouldn't change anything whatsoever. Often there can be a temptation to check here, just out of fear of a better hand, random ace X getting there. But I think it's pretty important to not do that. I think it's important to just keep betting here. Bet again, 115 this time. The player in the cutoff goes into the tank and thinks for a while, and he's only got about $300 or $350 total. And after thinking for a while, he jams it in there. Player on the button folds, obviously snap call here, never getting away from any sort of hand in this spot with these stack sizes. So off to a river card. It's another ace, offsuit ace. He shows us ace 8 offsuit, I think. So we're going to win this one. And again, pretty important to keep betting there, because oftentimes you're going to be against an ace. Oftentimes you're going to be against a flush draw. Those are the most likely 2 holdings from those 2 opponents. So if we do check there on the turn, there is a pretty decent chance that the turn is going to check through with a player holding a weaker ace. And in this instance, tough for him to get away with that stack size a little bit. Sometimes players are going to feel a little bit inclined to sort of just go with it with the stack size that they have, and also protect against those flush draws. So yeah, that one worked out. Even though it looks really straightforward, there's a couple things to take away there with bet sizing, I think, and just not playing too weak, too passive, too afraid. In this next hand, I have the button straddle on, and it's not something I'll do regularly, but it's very lineup dependent. If the button straddle is going to start affecting people's ranges, they're going to start tightening up, and out of fear of playing out of position, then I won't put the button straddle on. But if I'm in a lineup where I don't think it's going to matter, people are going to play their hands no matter what, then I might button straddle occasionally. So in this hand, that's kind of the situation. I put the button straddle on, and we see a middle position limp, the big blind calls, and we look down at pocket aces. Pretty sweet situation there. So I go ahead and make it 50 to go. Middle position player makes the call. So heads up to a flop this time. Queen 10-10 rainbow. He checks it over to me, and this time it's a pretty dry flop. Some straight draws available, sure. Some 1 pair holdings such as queen X available, but I decided to size down a little bit since it's pretty dry, and I make it 40. Middle position player calls. We see a 6 of diamonds on the turn, which brings the 2nd diamond on board. When he checks it over to me, I don't think it's going to be that easy to get 3 streets on this type of a board. So even versus Queen X, they're probably going to find a fold on the river. So I just decided to check it back and try and protect against 10X. Try and get some value on the river if possible. River comes a total brick, and he grabs $200 worth of chips and slides it out pretty quickly. Not too much choice here, having under up my hand, down bet the flop, check back on the turn. Definitely have to call here, even though when they grab a handful of chips like that, it doesn't look too good too often, but obviously not going to fold the aces here. So I make the call, and we get shown pocket 6s. So pretty unfortunate there. Some run bad, get the aces cracked. If I bet a little bigger on the flop, maybe he folds it, maybe not. Honestly, after watching this opponent, I didn't know at the time, but after watching this opponent later on, I don't think so. He probably would have called anyway. So don't think there was too much I could have done. Happy that I checked back on the turn there and keep the pot somewhat reasonably small. Run bad, a little bit of run bad there. In this next hand, no straddle on. Under the gun player limps. I look down at pocket kings this time, another premium hand. So we're going up to $25 this time. Limper makes the call, so heads up to a flop. And by the way, this is the same player who I just played the previous hand with. Cracked my aces and heads up this time to a flop. This one comes 6-6-7 rainbow. He checks. Happy to put out a bet here. I make it 35. Lots of hands that can continue here. And indeed, he makes the call. So off to a turn card. Turns an offsuit 8. Full rainbow on board now. Checks it over to me again. No reason to stop betting here, since I think a lot of hands can pick up a pair plus straight draw now. I don't see a 7 folding. I don't see a hand like 8-7, 9-8, 9-7, 5-7. Lots of hands, lots of limp calling hands pre-flop that can continue here. So try to get some more value here. I bet $95. He's got 260 in his stack. He decides to go with it, jams it all in there. Obviously losing to some hands, but the way I've seen this player play, not doing anything other than making the call here with pocket kings. River shouldn't change too much too often, and he shows us 4-5 offsuit for the turn straight. So, same player in the same session manages to pull off the cracking aces, followed by cracking the kings in almost back-to-back hands. He lost some chips in between those two hands, so the damage is a little bit minimized due to him being kind of short-stacked in both of these hands. Further silver lining is that they're limp calling with 4-5 offsuit, and what did he have in it? I don't even remember what he had, but could be going a little bit better. It could be going a little bit better, not going to lie. What can you do? Keep firing. One more interesting hand here coming towards the end of the night. Wrap this one up. Managed to claw back to a little bit above even, a little bit in the green at the moment in this before this hand comes up. And in this hand, I have the under the gun straddle on. So once again, my sort of thoughts on straddling. Also very good when deep, over $1,500 effective here. That's 300 big blinds. It's the biggest 2-5 game in town, and there's some bigger stacks on the table. I think that makes for good straddling opportunities since there's still pretty deep effective stacks, even with a $10 third blind out there. So that's my thinking when I put the straddle on. Folds around to the small blind, who puts in a raise to $45. The big blind calls, and I look down at pocket sevens. I make the call here as well. We're off to a flop 3 ways, which comes pretty favorable for us for the pocket sevens. 7 deuce deuce, flop full house here. Small blind checks, big blind checks. And interesting decision here. Could obviously check behind having a hammer lock on the hand. But that being said, I think there's some opportunities here where my opponent can call with a decent sized range. The flop shouldn't improve anybody too often. Granted, I can have a pair such as 8s, 9s, even 6s, something like that, where I'm betting to sort of try and deny equity. But a lot of those hands are going to have 2 overs at worst. So you can easily make the call there. Other hands can call, such as flush draws, etc. So I go ahead and put out a bet, even though we're often crushing everybody in this situation. I bet $60, and the initial raiser in the small blind folds pretty quick, but the big blind makes the call. Very good news here. Would be very disappointed with all those thoughts if both players ended up folding. So happy to see some continuation here, and the turn comes the 8 of hearts, which brings a second flush draw on board. He checks it over to me, and again, another decision to be had, but I don't think I want to just check back here. I want to keep my foot on the gas a little bit, try and build some pots. I think that's sort of generally the strategy when you're playing 1-2 and 2-5. Make good hands, try and build pots. People don't like folding that often, even though I don't think this opponent is bad by any stretch. I think he's actually a pretty decent player. So even though I have respect for him, I still want to just keep betting, keep building a pot there. I can certainly understand checking back here on the turn, give a free card to flush draws, give a free card to a hand like pocket 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s. But I just decide to try and keep building the pot. I put out another bet. I bet 130 this time. Once again, my opponent makes the call. So again, very good news, unless he happens to have a hand like pocket 8s, of course. We are beating pretty much everything else. Pocket deuces too, that's unlikely. So we're off to a river, and it's the 10 of hearts. So the backdoor flush comes in. He checks it over to me, and I'm deciding on a bet of $320 this time. Could maybe even size a little bit bigger there, since I'm going to have a lot of busted diamond draws, and I could bet maybe a polarized sizing there. I don't know if he's going to expect me to have a deuce that often, so it's a little bit, could easily be pretty questionable in his mind. Anyway, he's well into the tank, thinking for a really long time, and he shows me his hand, which is ace 10 of diamonds, I think. I actually didn't get a very good look at it. I think that's what he had, though. So he had the flush draw and river top pair, thinking for a really long time. It's tough for me, when he has the ace 10 of diamonds, I think it's a little bit tough for me to have too many flush draws, although there are other ones available. So after thinking about it for a very long time, he eventually talks himself into the 1 chip call, tosses the 1 chip out there to signify a call, and that's good news. So we're going to win a pretty decent sized pot there towards the end of the night. Some run good after decent amount of run bad comes our way. We end up playing for somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 hours in this session. Proper cash game session in Las Vegas, in the usual sense of the words, and into the game for $1,500. Onto the game for exactly $2,200. So we book a profit of $700. Obviously, booking a win over 100 big blinds is great, but anytime you play a session where you get pocket kings cracked, pocket aces cracked, and things aren't going your way, and you still manage to book a win of $700 in a C5 game, it's a pretty good moral victory, and definitely something to take away.